Welcome back, and so let's transit from the economy to party politics now and look at the state of health of opposition politics with particular focus on the African Democratic Congress and how they're positioned or not, as the case may be, to participate effectively in the coming general elections in 2027. And joining us on the program now is ADC Chieftain and, of course, the campaign director general for the Atiku campaign organization. Of course, he wears many hats. He's also a legal practitioner. Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo joins us from our Abuja studio this morning. Mr. Okonkwo, good morning, sir. It's good to see you. Welcome to the morning brief.
Good morning, morning brief, and thank you, viewers, and good morning to Nigerians for joining us.
And so, I'd like you to do a layer.
If you would, I'm sorry to intervene and interfere. I am a spokesperson for His Excellency Atiku Abubakar. I am not the campaign DG for the ADC.
Thank you for the correction. The two look similar anyway. So he's a spokesperson for the Atiku presidency. Thank you for coming on the program. I'd like you to do a layout for us because it can be confusing. There is the appeal court reserving ruling on the deregistration of the ADC after parties adopted their briefs. There's also a ruling, I believe, ordering the deregistration of the party. And there's also the nephew Bala Gombe. And, you know, these litigations, make the ADC's participation ominous ahead of 2027. Do a layout for us on the state of these cases and before we, enter the conversation fully.
All right. The first thing I want to say is that the judge of a federal high court, Justice Lehman, has laid it to rest that the David Mark-led executive leadership of ADC is duly elected. And so the position of the court now is that David Mark-led leadership is authentic and they are the ones in charge of ADC. That's settled. In the issue of the current ruling or judgment of the Court of Appeal, the issue that was decided was who has the power to conduct the state congresses. It has nothing to do with the leadership of David Mark. In other words, the leadership of the ADC. It has nothing to do with the primaries conducted by ADC. It was just decided based on who has the authority to conduct the state congresses. State congresses produce the state executive council. In other words, the leadership in the sub-unit, sub-head, in the internal organ of a political party. And as you may have understood, the majority judgment of the Court of Appeal said that the State Executive Council has the power to organize the State Congress, while the minority judgment stated the law as it is, in my own opinion, that the courts do not have jurisdiction whatsoever to interfere in the internal affairs of political parties. And the minority judgment actually stated the law as written in section 83 subsection 5 of the Electoral Act 2026 that made it clear that the courts do not have jurisdiction to entertain any matter that borders on internal affairs of a political party. Now, look at it as simple as it is. The issue of state executive council is even internal in itself, because as you can see, they don't even have the right by law to relate with INEC. The section 82, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act 2026, you know what it said? It's very clear. It said the party shall give to the commission at least 21 days notice for any convention, conference, congress on the line, meeting, convene for the purpose of electing the governing bodies of political parties, electing the executive committees, or nominating the candidates of political parties or merger. So it is the party that has the right to relate with INEC on any issue that has to do with electing its officials. Look at subsection 2 of that section 82. It said that the party in that notice must indicate the time, venue, date, and names of the members of the committee, names of the members of the conference, convention, or congress committee that will organize the election in accordance with the party's constitution. So you see, even Electoral Act recognizes that it is the committee set up by the party that organizes state congresses, not the state executive council. It will be ridiculous. As a matter of fact, a court saying that the state executive council will organize the election that brings itself to power is against natural justice, equity, and good conscience. Natural justice forbids you to be a judge in your own cause. How can Tinubu, for instance, organize the election that brings Tinubu to power? It is really laughable. So I'm sorry to say that that judgment reflects what the Court of Appeal said recently: judicial rascality, judicial impertinence. Judicial rascality is a situation where courts or judges act recklessly, act very, very unethically and capriciously to circumvent the law. It is a situation where the legal process is manipulated to serve ulterior or political motive rather than uphold justice. So you can see that by the letters of the law, justice is not being maintained by the courts when it has to do with opposition. Supreme Court has made it clear that you do not interfere in the internal affairs of political party. And when you do it, Supreme Court says it's judicial impertinence. Judicial impertinence is a situation whereby a lower court brazenly disregards the order, the authority, the hierarchy of an appellate court. The appellate court has made it clear. So why would lower courts be ruling otherwise? That's judicial rascality. That's judicial impertinence. And we have to stop it. I want to plead that the judiciary should not lend itself to be used by the ruling party APC to litigate the opposition parties out of existence. That is what is going on. Nothing else. We don't have any problem here.
Mr. Kongwa, let's stay with the party. So, besides the comments around the judiciary, which you're a member of the judiciary as a member of the bar as well. So the argument will always be, for every case there are uniqueness. You're talking about facts. We're talking about legal questions that has to be adjudicated over. We're talking about the legal or judicial reasoning of the justices or the judges in this case. So sometimes the cases may be different, the merits may be different, and all of the argument that they put forward. But I think the Electoral Act is quite clear on how far the court can go, and the judges have also found a way to come into internal affairs of party. That debate is still ongoing across board, and we hope we can find a resolution once and for all on that particular matter. But let's stay with your party for a moment. Two questions. One is directed to you. One is, I have just looked at the page, Twitter handle or X handle of Rotimi Amechi, the former governor of Rivers, the former minister. I haven't seen anything about his page that shows that he's the vice presidential candidate of the party. So I know there was just back and forth. So first and foremost, has ADC been able to upload all its candidates, presidential, everything to INEC portal? That's the first question, because there were issues around whether Nafiu Gombe had access or not. And I think Bolaji Abdullahi clarified that. So first, has ADC been able to upload? And do you think that the vice presidential candidate of the party is as excited as he should be in carrying the party, just like other vice presidential candidates are carrying to prosecute this election? And then, in addition, I remember you were very unhappy when he was chosen as a vice presidential candidate because you felt that this is in the Igbo zone to at least have some seats on the table. because you're very vocal when you're not happy about things, but later you were appointed as spokesperson, and it looks like you were also happy. So help us balance all of this.
All right. So specifically, I want to tell you that ADC has uploaded all its candidates in accordance with the law, in accordance with the guidelines stipulated by INEC. ADC is one. And we want to use this opportunity to deprecate false information and propaganda which APC and their loyalists and their moles in all the opposition parties always proclaim to put uncertainty in the hearts of Nigerians. We have uploaded all our candidates, starting from His Excellency Atiku Abubakar as the presidential candidate of ADC, down to all our members. So we are clean. Any other purported upload by any purported human being called Nafiu Bala is fake, false, and fabricated and should be disregarded. INEC has made comments about that, and it is settled. The police should be investigating false information by now if we were in a saner society. Having said that, the ADC has also announced Rotimi Amechi as the vice presidential candidate of ADC. And in our own nature, the way we do things, whenever such issue arises and there are sections in our party that are saying things or registering some reservations, we always go internally to negotiate, to dialogue democratically so that we can reach compromise and come back together as one to move on. So what is happening now is that negotiations are going on, dialogue is going on to suit all the nerves, to calm all the nerves, to sort out grievances, to sort out reservations that anybody may have. And then we will move on together as one. Rotimi Amechi is the vice presidential candidate to His Excellency Atiku Abubakar. Coming to your own question as to myself, let me correct something that you said. There was no place in what I wrote that I mentioned His Excellency Rotimi Amechi. There is no place that I said that I am against his choice as a person. I said I would have favorably been disposed by the choice to have come from Southeast, not South-South, because Southeast has not produced the president or vice from 1999. The name Amechi is Igbo, so I couldn't have been saying Ndi Igbo because his name is also Igbo and culturally is from an ethnic nationality that even the president of Ohanese comes from his own nationality in Nigeria of today. So it has nothing to do with Igbo or not Igbo. I was talking about geopolitical balancing. But you know, we had some peculiarities before the election where people indicated their interest to contest for the presidency. And the person that represented the Southeast in that calculation left unceremoniously before the conclusion of the process. That left Southeast disadvantaged and confused. And then immediately P2B exited. It was as if that position that would have been given to Southeast was vacant. And so within the limitation that we had of the Electoral Act that forbids you from picking anybody outside the political party who was not a member 21 days to the primary. Some beautiful names were tropped up. You talked about Abaribe. You talked about Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. You talked about some nice names. But those names, they were no longer members of ADC. So the Southeast was now disadvantaged and thrown into confusion, and there was a lacuna. That was why the Excellency Atiku Abubakar still went to the nearest person that is closest to the Southeast. In other words, for you to know that he has nothing against the Igbo people. And then, when that choice was made, efforts were also made to explain out the reasons why such a choice would be made. And when I was convinced from all the available data and information, it was a nice thing. The spokesperson I was willing to give up for the interest of Igbo. But when everything was now stated very well, and the interest of Igbo and Southeast was now recognized and guaranteed, then it was a go-go for me. And we are now one big and happy family. ADC is going to form the next government of Nigeria, and Atiku Abubakar will be the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria by the grace of God.
Mr. Konkwa, it's amazing how you've laid your arguments. If that happens, it means that we'll have a northerner become president for perhaps the next 8 years, because in this part of the world, when you become president or governor, you want to do 2 terms. So I'm wondering the conviction that you have to support such a candidacy, especially because you are an Igbo man. So I'm wondering where that conviction is coming from. 2, the party, ABGA, I know you're not a member of ABGA, but ABGA has also adopted President Bola Tinubu as its official candidate as well to support the presidency of President Bola Tinubu, the candidacy of President Bola Tinubu. So in my head, and if you do that calculation, it looks like in the next 8 years to 12 years, we will not have any Igbo man become president if that happens. So does it also paint a picture of how those in the Southeast are willing to play the politicking of Nigeria? Does it also paint the picture of perhaps maybe the Southeast does not understand how the politicking works? Because one would have thought, and there are those who even think that you perhaps should have followed your heart and follow perhaps Mr. Peter Obi to the NDC.
All right. Now, let's put it this way. I was just thinking that you were talking about the calamity that will befall the Southeast if they ever vote for APC. Because presently, APC has Muslim ticket. We are almost 100% Christians, about 99.9%. Now, if APC ever comes to power, automatically in the next 4 years, there is nobody from the Southeast. There is no Igbo person that will be president or vice. And Tinubu, from his utter hatred for Igbo, certainly in 2031, he may not support any Igbo person to be the vice presidential candidate of APC. So automatically in the next 12 years, there will be no Igbo person, most probably, that will be president or vice under APC. And most probably, we don't know how Tinubu behaves. He has shown himself as a religious bigot, because for 8 years he wants to foist a same-faith ticket, which even the Muslim ulama from the north has deprecated and has described as an abomination, a haram, because they understand that in a multi-religious society, there is a need for religious balancing. So that kills APC for any average Igbo man, for anybody from the Southeast. Now, let's talk about this option. Recall that in 2022-23, there might not be any Igbo man that fought like I did to ensure that an Igbo man became president. We believe that we won. But after that, it was taken away from us. And we couldn't do anything because we did not have the power of the army, police, or air force, no governmental power. And we did not have even the force that could make us to change the system without still going through the normal process of judicial process, which turned out the way it turned out. In 2027, you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. In 2027, Tinubu is now an incumbent. He was not an incumbent in 2022, 2023. And he was able to grab the power, to snatch it, to run away with it. And now he is the commander-in-chief. And I am telling you that no politician that has any sense of reason will think that you will go alone to confront an incumbent that has the power of the state, who have said it clearly that I will snatch power, I will grab it, I will run away with it. So I said that all the political leaders, all the political parties, all the opposition leaders should come together in a coalition. And when they come together in a coalition, they should submit themselves to the primary, because the opposition does not have the luxury of giving free ticket or choosing anybody. You have to choose somebody that every sector of Nigeria accepts. And I said, when they come together, they will go into primary. Whoever wins, I will support. And the opposition leaders, everybody, including Peter Obi, including Kwakwanso, including Atiku Abubakar, including Rotimi Amechi, all of them, they came together and made a choice of ADC. So ADC, as 2027 is concerned, is not a party for the North, for the South, for the East or West. It is the party for Nigeria and Nigerians that the whole opposition leaders came together to adopt. And that party chose Atiku Abubakar. And that was a very strategic choice, because recall that when Yaradua died and Goodluck Jonathan came in 2011, the North were not allowed to do their 8 years, because they say a supervening factor that has happened, which made Jonathan to become president. 2011 was to be for the Northerners to do their 8 years. It was truncated. So rotation is between North and South, 4-year term of a president. The president does not have 8 years term. Now, the second term for an incumbent president is a referendum on his performance. It is obvious that Tinubu has failed and wants to drag Nigeria into destruction. So we are talking about survival now. We're not talking about zoning, since rotation has been achieved. And no one zone, no one geopolitical zone, no one section of the country can defeat an incumbent without the support of everybody. So ADC provided that option, and ADC went into primary and produced Atiku Abubakar. And I made it clear before that time that whoever the opposition brings, I will support. And thank goodness it has pleased His Excellency Atiku Abubakar to make me his spokesperson. So I am a spokesperson for the opposition coalition, opposition leaders, opposition parties. And that is why I am telling Nigerians that Atiku Abubakar is a man that has played on the national scene, that has built bridges across the 6 geopolitical zones, and he will bring to bear his intelligence, his experience in economy, in security, in all the aspects of Nigerian life, which he did as a vice president, which he did with Obasanjo. And we have the best economy and best security then. And this is the only man that has had that national experience amongst the people that wants to contest. All the other people had just become governors in their own tiny space.
So
and you can see what Tinubu is doing.
In your commentary,
He's just choosing people from Lagos and all those things. Rotimi Amechi has been the speaker of the House. If I may come in there,
if you can hear me, Mr. Konko, pardon me if I may come in there. I'm not quite sure that you're, taking your commentary in the direction of the question of my colleague Kelly, and some would say you're only just doing your job as a spokesman of Mr. Atiku, by selling his candidacy. You said earlier that.
Do you remember?
Hold on, pardon me. Yeah, he was talking about Igbo. His question was in the direction of the Igbo the need for an Igbo presidency, which I'm about to follow up on. But I just want to mention a few things in line with your commentary. You talked about the president's hatred
you asked
for
the
the
question
Igbos.
very well.
Pardon me, hold on. Hold on, Mr.
Amechi
Kokwa.
is Igbo. Amechi is already Igbo. And he is going to be the vice president in 2027.
Some would argue against that. And you did a layout that Mr. Amechi is from the South, not from the Southeast. But some would say that
I want him to correct
your
it.
submission.
That's why I want him to correct his question.
Hold on, Mr. Kokwa.
Southeast, not Igbo.
Mr. Kokwa, some would say your submission that Mr. President has a hatred for the Igbo is wrong. Because recall that when Mr. President was governor of Lagos State.
Yeah.
He's the first, perhaps in the history of Nigeria, to appoint a non-Yoruba into his cabinet as commissioner who was retained over a period of time in the Lagos State cabinet. That's on the one hand. So that could puncture your argument that he has a hatred for the Igbo. So you also talked about, what could have been concluded in the Yar'Adua presidency but for his death, which, for convenience, President Jonathan had to continue. We've had 2015 to 2023, a northern presidency. So another argument that could puncture yours is that it's only trite for the South to complete another 4-year tenure after the first 4 years of President Tinubu. But let's now do a narrowing further on the need for the Igbo presidency. Despite your argument, one cannot ignore the fact that the Southeast is fractured. My colleague mentioned earlier APGA endorsing the president for 2027. And besides that, all the other Southeastern states are now APC. And you going against the NDC presidential candidate, Mr. Peter Obi, in what many consider a very surprising turn of events, further fractures the Southeast and makes it ominous for the Southeast to ever achieve that age-long aspiration to be, taste power in the political trajectory of Nigeria. And some would ask why your how do I put it now? Why your consistent opposition to Mr. Peter Obi?
Well, first and foremost, you have brought too many things together. Yes, Peter Obi is the one who is now working against Igbo presidency and vice presidency because he came to ADC on his own. And he said he was going to contest under ADC. And he left about just 1 week to the close of time. So you cannot say, I am the one working towards Igbo presidency. And because of the fact that I could not see even that was why I said I am not going to even campaign until I am sure of that path to Igbo presidency. But I would prefer us to be using Southeast rather than Igbo. Because you have Igbo in South-South, you have Igbo in the North, and you have the Igbo predominantly in the Southeast. And as I keep saying, I'm talking about geopolitical balancing. So let us make that point. Because Amechi, for instance, is Igbo. And he's already the vice presidential candidate. And that is why I'm saying that is what makes me to even become more favorably disposed that ADC is the surest path to Igbo presidency. Now, when you talk about a Northerner doing 8 years, sorry, let me correct this. Buhari did 8 years to equal the 8 years done by Obasanjo, not to provide any avenue for the 8 years of another Southerner. Because like I told you, the 8 years of the North was truncated. And it was not because of death. Death made Jonathan vice president to complete the tenure of Yar'Adua. So the tenure would have ended in 2011, where the North would have been allowed to finish their 8 years. But they were not allowed to finish 8 years. I am very surprised that people want to make it appear as if it is the Northerners that started this issue of not allowing one side to complete their 8 years. 2011, the whole North came together, and 4 of them contested from the North: Buhari, Gusau, Saraki, and Atiku. And the North brought out Atiku to complete the 8 years of the North. Yet, they refused, and they used the incumbency of Jonathan to compel the power to shift to the South without not completing their 8 years. So when you talk about the issue, Atiku is the person that was disadvantaged and was the person that had the first injustice against truncating the section of a country from completing their 8 years, because the entire North brought Atiku to represent them. And yet, the incumbent power of Jonathan stopped it. So the issue is that, sorry, Buhari completed the 8 years that Obasanjo did. Now that we are in this situation, where Tinubu has done 4 years, let me tell you, if you bring another person from the south, the north will be very reluctant to vote for the person. As one interviewer said, he said because the north will believe that that person will do 8 years, meaning the power will stay 12 years in the south. So anytime you want to make a disruptive change, you must have to use somebody from the other sector and get an agreement with the person to do 4 years so that it will not be shared for 4 years. But the most important thing is that Nigerians are talking about survival now, not zoning. Tinubu has brought us to our knees that we are trying to survive as a nation.
Mr. Okonkwo,
look at the insecurity.
You have brought a new argument into the zoning conversation for which we're going to be chewing on for a long time, that the late Muhammadu Buhari completed the 8 years of Obasanjo. Well, I really don't understand that, but it's a conversation that continues. Pardon me, we must anchor at this point. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo is an ADC chieftain, legal practitioner, and of course spokesperson for Mr. Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the ADC. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Well, quite a lot to explore on that conversation. I wonder if we have time for trends.
No, we don't.
Today. We're totally out of time.
Yes. Totally out of time.
Thank you so much for being there. We're back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
I'm Kelly Egiga. You'd imagine that the politicking and calculation of politicking will continue in this country. That's it, everyone. Bye now.
2 things matter in politics: numbers and who can win. Make of it what you want. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Bye-bye.